May the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. Whenever I sit down to prepare to preach, one of the questions I ask myself is there a way to make this gospel personal, or to introduce things in personal terms? And I thought I had come up with nothing to use this morning by way of introduction to our gospel, but it was just given to me. Life can be messy. And this morning I experienced, and I imagine you experienced, a little bit of that messiness, the messiness of a combination of old age and an autoimmune disorder that affects my mobility converging, and my attempt to kneel on a kneeler without a kneeling pad. And you saw the result. Life doesn't always go exactly the way we want it to, and things are not always elegant and beautiful. In our creeds, we speak of Jesus as both divine and human. And admittedly, this is a mystery that's impossible to wrap our minds around. And so perhaps at any given time, we tend to emphasize one aspect of his identity over the other. Many might find it most seemly, most attractive to dwell on the divinity. But perhaps in reality, we do not think enough about the messiness of his human experience. Meanwhile, we have just entered a season that is one which invites us to grapple with the messiness of humanity, both Jesus's and our own. Ash Wednesday's rites remind us of our createdness as human beings and the limitations of our mortal bodies. Today, our readings consider our human inclination to transgress boundaries and what comes of such errors. Let's begin with our first lesson, containing as it does bits of the second of the two creation stories in Genesis. God makes a human being from the dust, and next God creates a garden, placing the human in the midst of it to care for it. Then, concerned about the human's loneliness, God creates the animals, and finally another human being to be a partner to the first. And life is good there. But then a tempter enters into the story, a serpent slyly suggesting that there is an additional good that God could give, but will not. God had warned the first human not to eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now, surely we might think it is a good thing to be able to distinguish between the two, between good and evil. But notice that in this story, it's not knowledge of good or evil, but knowledge of good and evil. In other words, the fruit of the tree that God warned against eating is all the knowledge there is to know. Everything good and everything evil. Such knowledge belongs to God alone. There are boundaries between what God can know and what humans can know. But the serpent insinuates that God is merely keeping the humans from power that they must surely want. The serpent of the story has introduced mistrust into the garden. Failing to trust God, the humans taste the forbidden fruit. A boundary between human nature and godlike being is transgressed in the tasting of that forbidden fruit. And there are consequences, not arbitrary ones, but the natural consequences of rebelling against human limitations. Innocence is lost. The humans seek or presume to know things they cannot handle. Our friend, the Reverend Dr. Paul Jacobson, whom many of you have met, calls the serpent the original snake oil salesman who suggests that being a limited, finite human being just wasn't good enough. We don't need to see Adam and Eve as two historical figures who destroyed our chance to live in paradise. It's enough to say that in mythic terms, these first humans are connected to us. They are us, all of us, from the beginning of time. The tale is about the human condition. We were created with free will. It comes with responsibility for our choices. And human nature being what it is, we act out of insecurity, grasping for more and more. What we really need is trust in our Maker. Which brings us to Jesus in the wilderness, famished and alone. Enter again the tempter, that snake oil salesman, who in effect asked the humans in the garden, why not become like God? Now the devil comes to the Son of God in the wilderness, and 3 times the tempter's question is, why not use your power as the Son of God for yourself? It's a reversal of the insidious question asked in Genesis. What is at issue is, can Jesus be fully human? Will he abdicate power, exercise restraint, and work in obscurity? That's the test, and the tempter wants him to fail it. So one more time, I turn to Dr. Jacobson, who writes, over the ages, the original snake oil salesman has become an international conglomerate. Its mind-numbing sales force has created no end of marketing plans that all ask the same question: who do you think you are? They even have snappy new names like algorithm and AI, whose non-human intelligence tempts us with the promise that we can know everything there is to know. Their ancient playbook seeks to create in us a sense of lack, insecurity, and inadequacy with the simple message that you are not enough, that just being human is unacceptable. You're not smart enough, attractive enough, strong enough, rich enough to deserve respect, love, and acceptance. But here's the thing, says our friend, it is all a damned lie, a demonic attempt at a kind of identity theft far worse than what we've come to fear on the internet. It all comes down to this: Jesus embraced what humanity so often rejects. In that wilderness confrontation, he chose to respect boundaries. He chose trust in God. He chose to be with us in the messiness of human life, even though he could have risen above it. Later, in his earthly ministry, Jesus would use at times some of the divine power that he eschewed there in the wilderness, but he would not do it for his own comfort, nor for public adulation, nor for sheer coercive control. He would use it for the sake of those who have hunger forced upon them, for those who were weak, for those in need of healing and encouragement. He would not reject his own humanity. He would go on and go so far as to choose weakness and the way of the cross to demonstrate that not even sin and death can stand between us and God's love and God's care. This, I believe, is precisely why every year on the first Sunday of Lent, we hear one of the accounts of those temptations in the wilderness. For him, the wilderness was where the Spirit led him to wrestle with his own questions of identity. What did it mean to be the Son of God? Would he succumb to the temptation to wield the kind of power worshipped in an earthly empire where control is everything? Or would he choose obedience to his own calling? Would he choose to be his true self? And what would his actions say about God? The answers to these questions have no less than cosmic significance. And now you and I, we have come to another Lent, another season where we are invited to consider at some depth who and what we are called to be, and to look squarely at our own choices and their consequences for good or ill. It's a time to ask ourselves what we fear and in whom do we trust. Which empire will have our allegiance? The worldly one where might alone makes right, or the godly realm where love rules in humility and in serving neighbors, known and unknown? And so as we take up the invitation of this season, may each and every one of us know a blessed Lent. Amen.